Okay. The recording has started. Okay. Again, good evening. So for this evening, this is the last chapter, Ethics, Fraud, and Internal Control for Accounting Information System. Yan. So the objectives of this chapter are to discuss the broad issues pertaining to business ethics, ethical issues related to the use of information technology, distinguish between management fraud and employee fraud, common types of fraud schemes, key features of SAS 78 or COSO internal control framework, and objects and application of physical controls. So, what is business ethics? Why should we be concerned about ethics in business world? Ikaw, sige nga, tanungin ko kayo. Bakit importante ang ethics? Yan. Bakit importanteng meron kang ethics? Unahin natin si Miss Davis. Blessed, ano ba ang pangalan mo? Paano ko ipopronounce? Blessery? Blessery A. Davis. Nandito po ba siya? Bless. Yes. How do I pronounce your name?
Blessery po. Blessery
Okay,
Davis.
Blessery. Okay. Why do you think ethics is important in a business world?
I think po, ethics is important in the business world po. Kasi po, para po makapag-implement tayo ng mga business practices po na makakatulong pa para po maging successful yung business po natin.
Okay. Para daw maging successful yung business natin. Okay? Tama rin yun. Paano ba nagiging successful ang business? How does a business started to be successful? Sige nga, paano ba? Saan ba nanggagaling yung success ng isang business? So, panggalingan natin yung mga sagot nyo. I-relate natin yung mga sagot ninyo. Miss Jean Pauline Mendoza.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Paano
Yung
ba
sa ano po,
nagiging
business ethics po
successful?
kasi,
Okay.
kung paano po minamanage ng managers, like, how do managers decide po what is right in conducting po in their business po?
Okay, sabi niya nagiging successful ang isang business if managers controls or manage the business rightfully, parang ganon. So, internal 'yon. Ano pang ibang factors para sa business mo na maging successful? Kay Jade Rogelio. Sa tingin mo, ano pang ibang factors, Miss Jade, para maging successful? Tama 'yon? Dapat ayos ang management?
Hello po, ma'am.
Yes, Jade.
Yes po. Para po maging successful din po yung isang business po, kailangan po yung mga employees po doon is mapagkakatiwalaan din po.
Okay, so parang katulad nung sinabi ni Jean. Sa kanya naman, general, mapagkakatiwalaan yung employees. Okay? So, si Jean naman, yung management daw dapat rightful yung mga decisions nila. Okay? Ano pa? John Carlos. So, tapos na tayo internally. External naman. Ano yung factors? Okay, to be a business, be successful. John Carlos Atienza. External factors.
Ano po, ma'am? External factors po. Para po sa akin ng external factors po na kailangan ng business ay kailangan po pagdating po sa economy, kailangan po ang business natin ay updated at alam po nila anong nangyayari sa market.
Okay, updated. Okay. Pero sino ba? Okay, ano natin, i-twist natin ng onti yung sagot mo. Sabi mo, dapat daw updated. Pero sino ba ang nakakapagbigay ng success sa business mo externally?
Para po sa akin, ma'am, yung mga ano po, yung mga investor po na nag-iinvest.
Investor? Okay, investor. Pwedeng investor kasi nagbibigay sila ng investment. Aside from investor, may investor ka na. Ano pa?
Customer po, ma'am.
O, customer. So, sabihin natin yon. Ayun. Tatlo yung binanggit ninyo. The management, the employees, and your customers. And I see John Carlos, dalawa. Customers and investors. Lahat ng yan, may kanya-kanyang concern. Correct? May kanya-kanyang gusto. Gusto ko mataas ang presyo, sabi ng mataas ang profit, sabi ng management. Gusto ng empleyado, mataas ang benepisyo. Sabi naman ng ng customer, gusto ko mura pero magandang quality. Sabi ng investor, gusto ko mataas ang kanilang rate of return. To manage those conflicts or interest in the business, we use business ethics or we practice business ethics. This is needed when conflicts arise and the need to choose. Kanino ba ang dapat kong sundin? Isa lang ba? Lahat ba? Contradicting sila eh. Conflicting sila. So this is how we use or practice business ethics. This is why we should be concerned about ethics in business world. Kasi ang lahat ng tao may kanya-kanyang gusto. And alam niyo po ba ang nagiging dilema? Kung walang ethics, just imagine in a world where ethics is not important. So, walang pakialam kung masama ang tao. Just imagine okay lang kahit masama kang tao. Okay lang kahit nanloloko ka ng tao. Okay lang kahit hindi ka pumapasok ng ayos. Nakikita nyo? Parang ang chaos, ang chaotic. So, kaya merong business ethics. Dapat, parang lang yan eh. Yung empleyado mo, ikaw yung boss. Yung empleyado mo galit sa'yo. Professional lang. Ginagawa ko lang ang trabaho ko, sasabihin ng boss. Anong ina-apply niya? Business ethics. Hindi niya pinipersonal, pinagalitan kita, dahil dyan, friends over na tayo. Hindi ganoon. Anong pre-practice? Business ethics. Mali ginagawa mo, kaya ko sinasabi to na ganito. Importante yan sa business world. Okay? Business ethics involves finding the answer to two questions. First, how do managers decide on what is right in conducting their business? So tama yung ginawa ang sabi ni Dean. Okay? Sabi ni Dean, yung managers daw po, paano sila nagde-decide? Number two, once manager have recognized what is right, how do they achieve it? Anong sabi? Dapat high quality. Nakita ng managers, dapat daw high quality yung product. Ang sunod na tatanungin, under business ethics, paano ko magagawang high quality? O sa business ethics, dadayain mo ba yung quality? Dadayain mo ba yung mga certifications? So nandun pa rin yung sa business ethics. Paano mo i-achieve yung mismong decision mo? Okay? These are the four main areas of business ethics. We have the equity, rights, honesty, and exercise of corporate power. So, meron dyan, makikita nyo yung mga iba't ibang conflicts kung saan nai-involve yung main four areas. Sa equity, we have the executive salary. Dapat ba na marami na magbigay ako ng share options sa mga aking executive? Comparable worth and product pricing. Sa rights, corporate due process, dapat bang nagtatanggal agad-agad ng empleyado? Employee health screening, employee privacy, sexual harassment, diversity, equal employment opportunity, and whistleblowing. For honesty naman, we have employee and management conflict of interest, security of organization data and records, misleading advertising, questionable business practices in foreign countries, accurate reporting of shareholders' interest. And for the last area is the exercise of corporate power, political action committees, workplace safety, product safety, environmental issues, divestment of interest, corporate political contributions, and downsizings, and plan closure. Plant closure. So these are ethical issues in business. Computer ethics naman tayo. Tapos na tayo sa business ethics. It concerns the social impact of computer technology. Anong ibig sabihin? Degrading ba yung magiging system? Paano nangyayari yun? Ano yung magiging contribution ng mismong computer technology sa hardware, software, telecommunication, sa mismong company? Yun yung isa sa mga tinitingnan. Conflicting ba yung nilalagay kong controls doon sa system? Yung system ba is editable? Computer ethics yon. These are the main computer ethics issue. First, privacy. Meron bang capability yung system na hindi mailalabas? Kunyari, syempre nagkakaroon ng data collection, kunyari GCash. Meron silang system for data collection. Once na mag-register ka doon, paano nila may ensure na merong data privacy? Number 2, security, accuracy, and confidentiality. How are they sure na yung mga accounts mo, details mo ay hindi lalabas? Ownership of property. Paano mo masasabi na ikaw lang ang makaka-access doon sa mismong system? Okay? Equity and access, environmental issues, artificial intelligence, unemployment and displacement, and misuse of computer. Actually, one of the computer ethics dito naman nakikita ko na parang mas nagiging mas magiging main issue in the future yung AI, yung artificial intelligence. Kasi actually under yung tinatawag nating data science, sa data science, after collection of data, ipaprocess mo yung data, i-store yung data, is system na or program na. Kunyari sa accounting merong mga process na pwedeng si system na ang nag-audit o yung tinatawag nating computer-assisted auditing. Ngayon, si computer-assisted auditing, it gives reports. Ma'am, anong effect ng AI, yung artificial intelligence? Ang nakikita ko dyan, yung mga nakikita natin sa movies, na minsan, AI na ang nagde-decide para sa atin. Because AI, kasi nga artificial intelligence siya, it develops. It develops on how is kung ano yung nagiging, ano yung mga factors para sa movement niya, sa processing niya, mga controls niya, nadidevelop sa mismong computer. Computer develops itself. Parang ganun ang lumalabas sa AI. Kaya parang feeling ko, ito yung mga sa susunod. Tama ba na yung AI ang nagde-decide para sa atin? Tama ba na pag sinabi ng AI ganito, ito agad yung ating, ito yung ating susundin? Ito yung result doon sa computer. Ito ba talaga? Okay? Because of an artificial intelligence. So ito, siguro, nowadays, hindi pa siya main issue. Okay? Kasi ang mga main issues pa natin, privacy, security. Kasi nga, syempre, nagsisimula pa lang yung technology. Parang feeling ko, nagsisimula pa lang yung technology in a way na ginagawa niya pa lang. Kasi parang kung yung titingnan mo sa transition from manual, kasi naabutan namin yan. Kami yung generation na naabutan yung manual, nag-umpisa yung technology, nagdi-develop yung technology, and ano pa yung mangyayari sa technology. Parang sa akin, this stage or this era is yung development stage of technology. Ano yung pwede pa nating i-develop ng i-develop? So wala pa kasi tayo dun sa issues na ano yung magagawa ng technology para sa atin. Andun tayo sa tama ba yan? Mapagkakatiwalaan pa yan? So ang issue pa natin, privacy, security. Nakukuha nyo ba? Nakaka-relate ba kayo sa sinasabi ko? Na yung minsan ang concern natin sa mga applications na mga kiniklik natin is safe ba to? Hindi agad talaga na ano yung maitutulong eh. Tama ba yung ginagawa natin? Secured ba to? Meron bang data privacy? Which is ito basically yung mga nandito. Pero not more on what are the effects na mangyayari because of this technology? Or yung sinasabi ko nga dyan, yung isa, yung AI. Hindi pa tayo pumupunta dun sa era na yung AI na, parang yun nandun sa mga nakikita nyo sa movies na AI na ang nagdi-decide, AI na ang gumagawa, AI na, yung mas matalino pa yung AI kesa sa'yo. Do you get my point? Na nakakaano ba? So, these are computer ethics. So, doon naman tayo sa susunod na topic, fraud. What are the legal definition of fraud? False representation, false statement or disclosure. Ibig sabihin, sinabi mo doon na meron kang land and proper PPE sa ganitong lugar. Dinisclose mo ba? Nilagay mo dun sa FS mo. Yung pala, wala naman pala. False representation. Material fact. A fact that must be substantial in inducing someone to act. Pwede ding ang isang false representation ay maging material fact. Bakit? Sa sobrang laki, kaya mo nilagay yung land and building doon sa FS mo, it is because you are trying to earn investors. Na makita ng investor, malaki yung asset ko. Malaki ang business ko. It is material fact. And it is fraud. Intent to deceive must exist. Okay? Ma'am, anong intent to deceive? Yun po kasi ang una, actually this is the first thing na tinitingnan sa law if there's fraud. And also in some crimes, unang tinitingnan sa krimen is the intent. Is there any intent for the crime to be committed? If there's an intent, there's a crime. So if there's an intent to deceive, then there's fraud. Next, the misrepresentation must have resulted in justifiable reliance upon information which caused someone to act. Dahil akala mo, okay, na tama yung FS, nakapag-invest ka. So, mayroong justifiable reliance. If financial statement yun eh. False represent mo. Inilagay mo na hindi naman totoo. Fraud ang tawag doon. And last, the misrepresentation must have caused injury or loss. Kanino? Kunyari, doon sa investor. Merong loss kasi makikita, hindi naman pala totoo na merong asset na ganon. Deceiving yung FS. Wala naman palang kita. So, anong mangyayari doon sa investor? The investor might incur losses in the future because of the investment. Ang tawag doon ay fraud. So, these are actually the character or the parang characteristics or criteria para pumasok na fraud ng isang misrepresentation. Okay? So, factors that contribute to fraud. Bakit ba nagkakaroon ng fraud? Unahin natin. Situational pressures. Ayan. Situational pressures. Mataas ang posisyon mo. Dito ha. Ito yung fraud. Titingnan mo yung fraud, no fraud. Ibig sabihin, pag may fraud, ito yung level na nagkakaroon ng fraud. Ito yung level na nawalang fraud. Situational pressure. Mataas ang position mo sa company. And because of that, or kunyari situational, mas bigyan natin ng emphasis bakit ba nagloloko ang isang tao or nanloloko ang isang tao. Kunyari, malaki ang pangangailangan niya. Huwag nating sabihin pangangailangan. Malaki ang kagustuhan niyang magkaroon ng maraming pera. Okay? Gustong-gusto niyang yumaman. Gustong-gusto niyang magkaroon ng sasakyan. Gustong-gusto niyang maraming pera. Anong gagawin niya? Magkukumit siya ng fraud. Bakit? Kasi mataas yung pressure. Yung situational pressure. Pero kung ikaw ay hindi nape-pressure na okay lang. Okay lang kahit ganito lang ang pera ko. Okay lang kahit ito lang ang sinisweldo ko. Hindi ka magkukumit ng fraud. Next, isa pang situational pressure. Mataas ang position mo sa company. And you are being compared to other managers. Kung kunyari, anong gagawin mo? Dahil mataas ang pressure, mas mataas din ang probability na magkaroon or mag-commit ka ng fraud compared to those managers na walang pressure. Next, opportunity. These are different from each other. Opportunities. So opportunities, if there's a high opportunity, paano? Ikaw ang naghahawak ng pera. Ikaw ang humahanap. Ikaw ang nangongolekta. So mataas ang opportunity mo kumpara doon sa hindi nangongolekta. Correct? So because of that, you have the high opportunity to commit fraud or basically to commit fraud kasi meron at ikaw ang humahawak ng pera. Kaya, pag high yung opportunity, mataas yung probability to commit fraud. Next, personal characteristics. Ethics. Ito na, personal. Pag mababa ang ethics mo, mas mataas yung percentage na mag-commit ka ng fraud. Manluloko ka. Sinungaling. Okay lang sa'yo magsinungaling. Okay lang sa'yong magnakaw. Okay lang manloko ng tao. Then, there's a high probability for you to commit fraud other than those person with high ethics or personal ethics. Ito yung relationship nila. Pag mataas ang pressure, may fraud. Pag mataas ang opportunity, may fraud. Pag mababa ang personal ethics mo, may fraud. Next. Sabi daw dun sa 2004 ACF study of fraud, loss due to fraud equal to 6% of revenues, approximately 660 billion sa Amerika po to. And if by position naman daw po, tingnan nyo, mas malaki yung percentage ng mas malaki yung loss. Okay? Mas malaki yung effect. Okay? Mas malaki yung effect if mas mataas yung position. Pero yung percentage of fraud, 12% lang. Yes, pero mas malaki, okay? Yung mas mananakaw niya kumpara dun sa mas mababang empleyado. Other results, higher losses due to men, employees acting in collusion, and employees with advanced degrees. Minsan kasi talaga sa fraud, minsan kunyari qualified theft ang niya. Pero fraud pa rin po yun qualified theft. Yung pinag-aralan yung sistema ng kumpanya, kung paano man loloko, paano kayo magnanakaw sa kumpanya, yan, marami po yan. Actually, ito gusto kong i-emphasize. Hindi lang po sa gobyerno ang maraming nanloloko. Sabi niyo, ma'am, corrupt po ang gobyerno. No. How many agencies, how many companies are not paying the rightful taxes? Marami po. And then, mas marami po ang nagko-commit ng fraud sa private. They try to bargain kung magkano yung babayaran nilang taxes. Yes, ma'am, may counterpart eh. O di parehas nga sila. What I'm trying to say, hindi lang po sa gobyerno nagsisimula ang isang corruption. Kasi meron po kasing eagerness din at meron din pong intent to deceive coming from private entity. They don't want to pay high taxes. Then they approach those people na alam nilang will commit fraud. So, hindi lang po yan sa gobyerno. It started with private entity. And who do that? Accountants. Ma'am, bakit po accountants ang sinisisi mo? Ikaw ba? Totoo ba? Meron kang, ang CPA, ang lahat ng profession, meron kayong oath that you will be rightful, that you will be credible, that you will be yung follow your ethics, your professional ethics. Bakit ka nanloloko? Bakit ikaw pa pumipirma? Bakit ikaw pa yung kasama dun sa mga nagpo-push kung paano mandadaya ng iyong tax para paliitin yung tax? If it is illegal way, then so be it. Pero pag illegal way, sino ang mga nag-uuna? Sino ang nagsasuggest niyan? Sabi dito sa Sarbanes Oxley Act of 2002, its principal reforms pertains to creation of public company accounting oversight board. Nagsimula po kasi ito nung nagkaroon ng fraud sa stock exchange nila. Yan. Sabi diyan, auditor independence must have more separation between firms attestation and non-auditing activities. Ibig sabihin, yung auditor, external auditor, kaya nagkaroon ng external auditor eh. Dapat hindi kasama sa company. Yung titingin ng FS mo dapat hindi magkaparehas. Hindi empleyado. Corporate governance and responsibility, such as your audit committee members, must be independent, and the audit committee must oversee the external auditor. Ito po, yung isa po sa dyan sa subject, sa governance. Iba pa po si top management sa governing body. Ito pong governing body, minsan po internal auditors po yan. Ang internal auditor ng isang company, hindi po yan nagre-report kay Finance Head, kay Vice President for Finance, Treasury. Direct po yan sa CEO o President. Nire-report niya po yung mismong anong nangyari doon sa audit niya. Okay? And disclosure requirements such as kung ano yung nakalagay doon sa financial statements, such as your notes to financial statements and all other disclosure, increase issuer and management disclosure. Mas nagiging transparent na ngayon. And the new federal crimes for the destruction of or tampering with documents, security fraud, and actions against whistleblower. So ito po yung itong act na to, itong batas na to, itong Sarbanes Oxley Act of 2002. Nagkaroon kasi ng fraud doon sa stock exchange. Okay. Now let's distinguish employee and management fraud. Sa employee fraud, it is committed by non-management personnel. Kunyari, simpleng empleyado, ganon. Usually consists of an employee taking cash or other asset for personal gain by circumventing a company's system of internal controls. Kunyari, hindi niya ini-record yung collection. Okay? Kinuha niya yung collection, yung cash, pero hindi ni-record yung collection. Hindi nagbigay ng resibo. Employee fraud ang tawag doon. While management fraud, it is perpetrated at a level of management above the one to which internal control structure relates. Ibig sabihin, dapat kasi ang internal control, di ba, embedded yan doon sa system? Pero, ang management, ang management fraud nangyayari if you have more, okay? If you are higher than the control, anong ibig sabihin na higher than the control? You can edit, okay? You can, ano bang tawag dun? Edit or, parang ano na rin, yung nababago, pwedeng mabago, or you can demand, or ikaw mismo ang nagpapatupad ng control. Frequently involves using financial statements to create an illusion that an entity is more healthy and prosperous than it is actually is. Anong isang example ng management fraud? Kunyari, sa cash. Cash pa rin. Yung isa, nagnakaw ng cash. Yung isa, para palubuhin na meron kang cash at the reporting date, okay? At the reporting date, ang ginawa mo, lahat ng initial checks mo, okay? Ang ginawa mo, pinalobo mo yung account balance mo. Tapos next day, yung pala ay hindi naman pala sa'yo. So, ang ginagawa mo, pinapalobo mo yung balances ng FS mo para masabing maganda yung balances ng cash mo. Kasi at the end of the reporting date, dun makikita yung performance eh. Makikita yung financial position ng company. Para to create, sabi nga dyan, an illusion that your company is healthy, nagumagawa ka ng management fraud. It involves misappropriation of asset. It frequently is shrouded in a maze of complex business transactions. Yan po, minsan ng management fraud. Kasi ito, collusion ng minsan maraming tao, maraming authority na sa company. Minsan ang hirap i-prove. Kasi they have the control. Just imagine, yung control, above, or yung management who created, who committed the fraud is above the one to which control structure relates. Mahirap po itong imbestigahan. Nakakasuhan, minsan hindi na ako convict. So, there are 3 categories of fraud schemes according to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiner or CFE. First is fraudulent statements, corruption, and asset misappropriation. So, these are the top 3 categories. Fraud statements. Fraudulent statements. Ano mga example? Misstating the financial statement to make the copy appear better than it is. Usually occurs as management fraud, may be tied to focus on short-term financial measures for success, and may also be related to management bonus packages being tied to financial statement. Yan, kaya ginagamit din yung fraudulent statement kasi kunyari yung share options. Kasi ito talaga ginagawa ng management to. Lalo na kung ang compensation base nila ay depende sa performance ng company. Katulad ng sinabi dyan, yung bonus package naka-based or tied to financial statement. Ano gagawin mo as management? Di papagandahin mo yung FS mo, fraudulent statement. Letter B, corruption. Example, bribery, illegal gratuities, conflict of interest, economic extortion. Sabi dyan, sa Foreign Corrupt Practice Act of 1977, indicative of corruption in business world, it is impacted accounting by requiring accurate records and internal control. So yan po yung nagiging natin. Kung sa accounting, relates to accounting, ito po yung mga possible na cases kung paano nagkakaroon ng corruption. And last, asset misappropriation. Most common type of fraud and often occurs as employee fraud. Kasi ito yung parang pinaka underbone, parang ganun Nandiyan na. Mas maraming empleyado kaysa dun sa mga business thinkers. Mas maraming empleyado kaysa sa mga decision makers. Tama? Sa mismong company. So, kalimitan, asset misappropriation. Example, making changes to expense account to cover theft of asset. O kunyari, kinuha mo yung pera, ang ginawa mo, ginawang expense, pero totoo, kinuha mo lang yung pera. Lapping, using customers' check from one account to cover theft from different account. Transaction fraud, deleting, altering, or adding false transaction to steal asset. Ang kinolekta mo, 1 million. Ang nilagay mo lang, 100,000. Tinanggal mo yung isang zero. Asset misappropriation yun. Okay? So, ano naman yung mga computer fraud schemes? Theft, misuse, or misappropriation of assets by altering computer-readable records and files. Theft, misuse, or misappropriation of assets by altering logic of computer software. And theft or illegal use of computer-readable information. And last is the theft or corruption, illegal copying, or intentional destruction of software. Last na, theft, misuse, or misappropriation of computer hardware. So, ma'am, ano po dyan? Paano po ma'am nangyayari yung computer fraud? Inedit yung files. Nakapangalan, kunyari, yung collection. May utang, kunyari. May utang yung customer. Nagbayad. Yung bayad, chinarge sa isa pang customer. Inedit. So, computer fraud yun. Inalter mo yung records. Computer fraud yun. Ito po yung mga example ng computer fraud. So, dito, itong General Information System Model, ito rin makikita nyo rin po to sa chapter 1. Okay? Itong General IS Model, paano napupunta dito or na-occur yung fraud dito? Sa data collection, sa data processing, at saka sa information generation. Diyan po data management nagkakaroon ng fraud. Paano? Unahin natin data collection fraud. This aspect of the system is most vulnerable because it is relatively easy to change data as it is being entered into the system. Nagkukulik ka pa lang from the sales order, nakalagay sa sales order 100,000. Ang ginawa mo 10,000 lang. So pwedeng ganun. Also, the garbage in and garbage out principle reminds us that if we input data is inaccurate, syempre ang magiging output nun inaccurate din. Kasi hindi naman yan makikita ng system Kasi nga data collection pa lang, wala pang processing. Mali yung nailagay mo sa system, mali na rin yung mailalabas ng system. Sa processing naman, data processing fraud. Program frauds. Altering programs to allow illegal access to and or manipulation of data files. Ito yung minsan na nangyayari sa mga government agencies. Nagkakaroon ng illegal access. Dapat kasi ang sabi nga natin embedded sa system yung internal control. Dapat ang meron lang access kunyari manager. Bakit may access po yung empleyado na ganito? Kaya nagkakaroon ng program frauds. Next, destroying programs with a virus. Operations fraud sa data processing. Misuse of company computer resources such as using the computer for personal business. So marami pong ganyan. Nasa opisina ka pero ginagamit mo yung resources ng company for personal business. Data processing fraud po yun. Next, data management fraud. Altering, deleting, corrupting, destroying, or stealing organization's data. Kasi nandun na tapos na na-process mo na. Ito na yun, lumabas na yung result. Ito na po, meron ka ng data. Oftentimes conducted by this granted or ex-employee. So, ang ginagawa, dahil ex-employee, dinidelete yung data, magaling. Kinokorrupt yung mga files. So, data management fraud ang tawag yun. So, yan yung mga empleyado na may ginawang kamalian sa company. Nanloko, meron ding mga employee fraud na ginagawa. Dahil magkaroon ng employee fraud, kasama na doon, system-based yung company. Kaya nadadama yung data, yung database or yung information system natin. So, hahanap ka doon, saan ba nagkaroon ng problema? Sa collection ba? Sa processing? Data management. Sa information generation fraud naman, stealing, misdirecting, or misissuing computer output, such as scavenging. It is searching through the trash can on the computer center for disregarded output, which is the output should be shredded but frequently is not. So, yung mga nasa trash bin ng computer, dapat dinidelete mo yun. Kasi minsan dyan naghahanap. Ikaw, tinanggal mo na. Kasi nga hindi na yan dapat makita ng iba. So, ang gagawin ng mga ganyan, yung information generation fraud, scavenging. Okay? Last natin na topic is internal control. Internal control objectives according to AICPA or AICPA, safeguard assets of the firm. Bakit daw merong internal control? Para sa pag-safeguard ng asset. Number 2, i-ensure accuracy and reliability of what? Siyempre ng records, ng FS, ng information. Sa tingin mo kung walang internal control ang company, will you trust the company? Will you trust the records provided by the company? Of course not. Number 3, promote efficiency of the firm's operation. And last, measure compliance with management prescribed policies and procedure. Sabi ng company, strict kami sa ganito. Dito lang, isa lang beses ka dapat mag-order or 2 beses ka lang dapat mag-order. So, because of that, that policy, control na agad yun So, makikita mo na agad yung compliance. Na sumusunod ba? Na 2 lang? 1 beses lang? So, yun po yung internal control objectives. So, modifying assumptions to internal control objectives. Number 1, management responsibility. Sabi that internal control is the responsibility of management. Hindi yan ng empleyado, management. Kasi sila ang gumagawa ng control. The establishment and maintenance of the system of internal control, responsibility po yan ng management. Hindi ng investor, ng board of trustee, but the management. Reasonable assurance. The cost of achieving the objectives of internal control should not outweigh its benefits. Cost-benefit analysis pa rin tayo. Pag mas malaki ang cost kaysa sa benefit, it defies the objective of internal control. Next, methods of data processing. The techniques of achieving the data or the objectives will vary with different types of technology. Pwede mo kasing i-process ang isang data with different technology. So, sa internal control, titingnan mo pa rin. Yung internal control ba? Nag-a-apply dun sa different technologies na yun? So, yun yung modifying assumption sa objective ng internal control. Kasi ito yung gusto ng internal control, Ito pong 4 na to. Bakit ba merong control or may internal control? Kasi gusto ko nitong 4 na to. Minsan hindi kaya. So, merong modifying assumptions. Okay? Limitation of controls or internal control. Possibility of honest error. Kasi nga garbage in, garbage out, di ba? Kunyari, nagkamali ka lang na dapat yung date ngayon, ang na-date mo kahapon. Honest error. Circumvention via collusion. Management override. Changing conditions, especially in companies with high growth. Yan yung mga limitation of internal control. So, these are the exposure of weak internal control. Pwede daw magkaroon ng destruction of an asset, theft of an asset. Kasi nga, yung objective ng internal control, hindi mo na-achieve. So, anong possible na mangyari dun sa company mo? Pwede magkaroon ng destruction of asset, theft of asset, corruption of information, and disruption of information system. So, tingnan nyo yung itsura na to, itong ano na to. Ito po yung sinasabing internal control shield. Sa illustration na makikita nyo, itong airplane na to, airplane, okay, na nagbababa ng mga, ano bang tawag nga dito? Anong mga tawag dito? Mga bombs na to. Itong mga bombs na to, yung tinatawag nating wrist. Yan. Yung mga bala na yan ay yung tinatawag nating mga undesirable events. Access, frauds, error, mischief. Itong shield na to ay yung internal control natin. From this event na pwedeng mangyari sa company, dapat meron kang internal control to shield the company, which is basically your asset. Ano po yung mga botas? Yung mga butas. This whole represents yung mga kakulangan sa internal control mo that should be developed or changed. So tingnan nyo dito. From the undesirable events na sinasabi natin, meron tayong tatlong level ng internal control. The preventive controls, detective controls, and corrective controls. Initially, preventive controls, pag may undesirable event, dapat maaano na niya na agad yan. Matatanggal niya na agad. Hindi pwedeng pumasok sa sistema namin yan. Hindi natin pwedeng i-push through yung transaction na yan. Preventive controls yun. Pag kunyari, ano mang example ng preventive control? Dapat doon sa form kompleto. Anong sabi? Kapag hindi kompleto, hindi pwedeng i-process. Tawag doon preventive control. Detective control. Siyempre may mga makakalusot doon. Kasi nga pwedeng may errors, or kung may mga honest mistakes, o dapat may detective control. Pagpasok mo sa system, pasok sa system, input mo, input. Ngayon, meron kang namali. Detective control yun. Babalik yun. Hindi magpo-push through. Pero there are some cases na hindi kinakaya ng preventive and detective control. Ang tawag doon, nagkaroon ka na ng error. Nagkaroon na ng pagkakamali, pwedeng error or miss or yung undesirable events ay nangyari na nga sa company. So there should be a corrective control. Anong mangyayari din sa corrective control? Pwedeng compensating control, compensating event po to, or compensating process, or any control that will correct yung error or yung undesirable events. So yan po yung dapat na makikita po natin dun sa system ng isang company. Preventive, detective, and corrective controls. Next natin is the COSO or the framework for internal control. Okay? Ito po yun. So ito po yung 5 internal control components or the framework. We have the control environment, risk assessment, information and communication, monitoring and control activities. So ano po ma'am yung control environment? It talks about generally the company itself. What is the control within the company or the control environment? First, integrity and ethics of management. Organizational structure, makikita mo na agad, bakit ang daming managers? Bakit nag-overlap yung mga managers? Role of board of directors and audit committee, management policies and philosophy, delegation of responsibility and authority, performance evaluation and measures, external influences or yung regulatory agencies, policies, and practices managing human resources. Number 2, risk assessment ng internal control framework. Sa risk assessment, yung internal control, system, or yung, not system, framework ng company, it should identify, analyze, and manage risk. Yung, undesirable event, it should identify. Pag na-identify, pwedeng magkaroon ka ng preventive control. Ngayon, may risk. I-analyze mo si risk. Ano ba yung effect ng risk na yun sa company namin? Dapat bang lagyan ko ng mas maraming control? Dapat ba mas may inilagay akong control doon? Dapat ba mas maraming authorization? Mas higher level of authorization yung transaction na yun? And you should manage the risk. Kasi minsan, nangyayari na sa company at hindi yun may iwasan. Because dito sa mga businesses or doon sa mga sa business world ay hindi po perpekto. Marami pong pagbabago at marami pong pwedeng mangyari relevant to financial reporting, such as changes in external environment, risky foreign markets, significant and rapid growth that strain internal control, new product lines, restructuring, downsizing, and changes in accounting policies. Third is information and communication. So, ma'am, paano po, ma'am, to? Dapat daw timely. Okay? Accurately. Yung control is, it identifies and record all valid transaction. Accurately records transaction in the time period in which they are occur. Dapat yung transaction na i-record mo ng tama, na i-communicate ng tama, reported, posted, and presented. Okay? Last is monitoring. The process of assessing the quality of internal control design and operation, such as your separate procedure of test of control by internal auditors, ongoing monitoring, kunyari sa computer module integrated into routine operation, nagkakaroon ng monitoring do sa mga napoproduce na reports, management reports which highlight trends and exception from normal performance. Actually, minsan ang isa sa mga control na ginagawa, example po natin, is yung budget report. Makikita mo dun sa budget at saka sa actual, isa po yun sa form ng monitoring. Bakit nagkukulang? Bakit sobra? Bakit may variance? What's the matter? How do we address these variances or these differences? So that is monitoring. And last na pala, control activities. These are policies, procedures to ensure that appropriate action are taken in response to identify the risk. Kasi nakita mo na yung risk, na-analyze mo, ngayon ma-manage mo. How do we manage? Through control activities. Your policies, your guidelines, your procedures. Minsan batas. Kung sa government yan, isa sa mga control talaga ay batas. Ang gobyerno, tumatakbo sila in accordance with the law. Ganon din naman ang mga business practices. Dapat in accordance with the law. Yan. It falls into two distinct categories, IT controls and physical controls. Kasi nga, syempre, kung ang isang company ay system or with system or with IT, syempre, dapat may IT control. Pero kung manual, dapat maganda ang physical control. Kasi maraming human intervention. Syempre, maraming, at saka prone to error pag manual. Okay? So, two types of IT control. Yung tinatawag nating general control and application control. Si general, it pertains to the entity-wide computer environment. Examples, control over data center, bawal pumasok sa IT office. General control yun, wala pa nangyayari na ina-access. Bawal lang pumasok. Organization databases. Ano yun? Yung ating storage ng data dito lang. Secured ng ganito, ganyan, meron CCTV, ganon. General control. System development and program maintenance. Isa sa mga control niyan, yung gumawa ng IT, ay nag-develop, nag-monitor, gumagamit, ay magkakaibang tao. General control. Yung application controls naman, it ensures the integrity of specific system. Kunyari, collection system, application controls. Controls over sales, ordering, processing. Ano ang nangyayari dun sa system? Accounts payable and payroll application. So, ito naman, kanina, ito IT controls, ito physical controls. Transaction authorization. Kunyari, approval of loan. Sino ang dapat mag-approve ng loan? Pag ganitong amount ng expense, sino dapat ang nag-approve? Pag malaking expense, marami ba dapat mag-approve? Next, segregation of duties. Meron bang segregation of duties? Wala bang conflict of interest? Next, supervision. Accounting records. Access control. Independent verifications. So these are the physical controls. Okay. Ano na natin yan? Physical controls naman in IT context. Ay, hindi pala. Okay na yan. So, yun lang pala. So, that ends our discussion for this evening. So, that is ethics, fraud, and internal control. Okay? So, medyo relatable siya in terms na hindi porket with IT system na or the company is already operating with systems, hindi tayo mag-a-apply ng ethics, ng professional ethics, that we should be also that companies are also prone to frauds or misstatements, na para maiwasan yon, dapat meron pa ring internal control. Minsan kasi, there are people na sasabihin, computer na yan eh. Hindi ko naman naiintindihan yung nandun sa computer. Basta ang alam ko, nag-encode ako. So minsan, dapat ikaw, if you will be an employee someday, hindi lang pwedeng basta sumusunod ka lang. In-input mo sa system, yung lahat ng binigay sa'yo na trabaho na hindi mo naiintindihan. Why? In a system-based company, there's always logs. Do not ever, ito tatandaan mo, do not ever give your password to your coworkers. Kasi in any way, in any cases, or if there are cases na may mabago sa sistema at log mo ang nandoon, account mo, username mo ang nandoon, hindi mo pwedeng ikaila yun. Because it is only you who must know your password para makalog in doon sa system. Kaya, wag mong ibibigay yung login mo or yung password mo, yung username, password to your coworkers. Be careful on that. Okay? So, yun lang para dun sa kahit meron ng system, yung isang company, you should be vigilant when it comes to that. Kaya nga kaya nga isa to sa mga topics for you to be open na, ay pwede nga mangyari. Hindi lang sa manual, meron din sa computer-based system. Okay? So that ends our discussion for this evening. So thank you for listening. Yan. So in-end ko na yung let me stop the recording na. Thank you everyone.